Jai, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Grantiraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Nita Gauravanandi. So today we're starting a new chapter, chapter 10, and it's called The Bhagavatam is the Answer to All Questions, and we're starting at text 12, and we'll go through to text 3 because there's no purpose for the first 2 verses. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Shri Sukha Avacha. Shri Sukha Avacha. Achasarga Visargascha. Achasarga Visargascha. Stanam Posanam Uttaya. Stanam Posanam Uttaya. Manvantare Shanukata. Manvantare Shanukata. Nirodha Mukti Ashraya. Nirodha Mukti Ashraya. Shri Sukha Avacha. Shri Sukha Avacha. Achasarga Visargascha. Achasarga Visargascha. Stanam Posanam Uttaya. Stanam Posanam Uttaya. Manvantare Sanukata. Manvantare Sanukata. Nirodha Mukti Ashraya. Nirodha Mukti Ashraya. Shri Sukha Vacha. Shri Sukha Vacha. Shri Sukadeva Goswami said. Shri Sukadeva Goswami said. Atra. In this Srimad Bhagavatam. In this Srimad Bhagavatam. Sarga. Sarga. Statement of the creation of the universe. Statement of the creation of the universe. Visarga. Visarga. Statement of subcreation. Statement of subcreation. Cha. Also. Stanam. The planetary systems. Poshanam. Protection. Uttaya. The creative impetus. Manvantara. Change of manus. Isha Anukata. The science of God. Nirodha. Going back home, back to Godhead. Mukti, liberation. Ashraya, the summum bonum. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, in the Srimad Bhagavatam there are 10 divisions of statements regarding the following: the creation of the universe, subcreation, planetary systems, protection by the Lord, the creative impetus, the change of manus, the science of Godhead, returning home back to Godhead, liberation, and the summum bonum. Please repeat. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said. In the Srimad Bhagavatam there are 10 divisions of statements regarding the following: the creation of the universe, subcreation, planetary systems, protection by the Lord, the creative impetus, the change of manus, the science of God, returning home back to Godhead, liberation, and the summum bonum. Text 2. To isolate the transcendence of the summum bonum, the symptoms of the rest are described, sometimes by Vedic inference, sometimes by direct explanation, and sometimes by summary explanation given by the great sages. Text 3. The elementary creation of 16 items of matter, namely the 5 elements, fire, water, land, air, and sky, sound, form, taste, smell, touch, and the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, and the mind, is known as sarga, whereas subsequent resultant interactions of the modes of material nature is called visarga. Purport. In order to explain the 10 divisional symptoms of the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 7 continuous verses. The first of these reference pertains to the 16 elementary manifestations of earth, water, etc., with material ego composed of material intelligence and mind. The subsequent creation is a result of the reactions of the above-mentioned 16 energies of the first Purusha. The Mahavishnu incarnation of Govinda, as later explained by Brahma in his treatise Brahma Samhita 547 as follows: Ya karana nevajale bhakti bhajati sma yoga nidram ananta jagadanta saroma kupa Atara Shaktim Avalamya Param Samurtim Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Vrajami. The first Purusha incarnation of Govinda, Lord Krishna, known as Mahavishnu, goes into a yoga nidra sleep, mystic sleep, and the innumerable universes are situated in potency in each and every hair hole of his transcendental body. As mentioned in the previous verse, Shrutena are with reference to Vedic conclusions. The creation is made possible from the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly by manifestation of his particular energies. Without such a Vedic reference, the creation appears to be a product of material nature. This conclusion comes from a poor fund of knowledge. From Vedic reference, it is concluded that the origin of all energies, namely internal, external, and marginal, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as explained here and before, the illusory conclusion is that creation is made by the inert material nature. The Vedic conclusion is transcendental light, whereas the non-Vedic conclusion is material darkness. The internal potency of the Supreme Lord is identical with the Supreme Lord, and the external potency is enlivened in contact with the internal potency. The part and parcel of the internal potency which react in contact with the external potency are called the marginal potency or the living entities. Thus, the original creation is directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead or Parabrahman, and the secondary creation as a reactionary result of the original ingredients is made by Brahma. Thus, the activities of the whole universe are started. So, translation of the first verse again. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, in the Srimad Bhagavatam there are 10 divisions of statements regarding the following: the creation of the universe, sub-creation, planetary systems, protection by the Lord, the creative impetus, the change of manners, the signs of God, returning home back to Godhead, liberation, and the summum bonum. Om Jnana Timanandasya Gyananjanam Shalakaya Chakshuan Militam Yenai Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, in this first verse, they're talking about, Sukadeva Goswami is talking about the 10 divisions of statements. So, I've just written down, which I'm just going to read from my book, about Sarga and Visharga. So, Sarga is the elemental creation. So the elemental creation of the 16 principles of matter, namely the 5 gross elements, Pancha Bhutas, the 5 objects of senses, sense perception, Tanmatras, the 5 knowledge acquiring senses, Jnanendriyas, and the mind are known as Sarga. The 5 gross elements, Pancha Bhutas, are earth, water, fire, air, and ether. The 5 objects of sense perception, Tanmatras, are sound, form, taste, smell, and touch. And the 5 knowledge acquiring senses, Jnanendriya, are the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. Together with the mind, these 16 principles are created by the first Purusha incarnation, Mahavishnu. Within these 16 principles, 8 other principles exist subtly, making them a total of 24 principles of material nature. So that's Sarga. Now Visharga is a secondary creation. So Visharga is defined as follows. Brahmana Guna Vaishamyad Visharga Purusha Smriti. The secondary creation by Brahma carried out through interaction of the 3 modes of nature is known as Visharga. By manipulating the 16 original principles of material existence, and by the interaction of the 3 modes of nature, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Lord Brahma carries out a subsequent creation, more properly described as an assembly of universal ingredients. So the third division of statement is the planetary systems. So the material world, it's created for the conditioned soul to load it over the material energy. And so we have this universe, and in this universe there's 14 planetary systems, and there's 8,400,000 species of life. And so according to our desires, we'll either go up and down in the planetary systems, attain a species of life which is conducive to our desires from our previous life. So the 14 planetary systems in Vedic cosmology, it's explained that there's 14 vertically arranged planetary systems or lokas, and each system there's a galaxy, and it's got stars, planets, and other celestial bodies. So in our planetary system we have the highest planet, which is known as Satyaloka, which is the abode of Lord Brahma. And next under Satyaloka is Tapaloka. And Tapaloka is a planet of the ascetics. And the ascetics are engaged in their meditation and austerities to, in a peaceful, serene atmosphere where they can get ready to go back to Godhead. And under Tapaloka we have Mahaloka, Janaloka, Svargaloka, which is the heavenly planets. And under that is Bhruvaloka, which is the planets of the Rakshasas and the ghosts. And then under that we have Bhuloka, which is this earthly realm. And Bhuloka it's described as a circle, and there's 9 varshas within this Bhuloka, which is 9 islands. And separating the islands, there's oceans as well. And these oceans, they're described as containing different ingredients, like we have the salt water, which is where we are. And then we have sweet water, there's milk, there's yogurt, there's ghee, there's all different ingredients, and there's all different inhabitants on these different islands as well. And each of these islands, they're separated by mountain ranges as well, so you can't actually go into another varsha. And then below Bhuloka, we have the subterranean planets. And that's Atala, Vitala, Sitala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, and Patala. And these lower planets, these subterranean planets, they're inhabited by demons. And in these planets, there's no sunshine that actually reaches these planets. And because there's no sunshine, time doesn't really play a big part there. And so the living entities there, they're not so affected by fear, because there's no time factor there. But because they have no sunshine, on the lower planets you have serpents there who have jewels on their hoods, and from these jewels the light is emanating, and so it lights up the whole area. And out of these planets, we've heard of Sutala, probably it's the most famous because that's the planet where Bali Maharaj is residing. And we know that Vamanadev, he pushed him down, but also as an added bonus, Lord Vamanadev resides on that planet as well as a doorkeeper of Bali Maharaj. And it's interesting, I was reading how Ravana, the demon from the Ramayana, he went to Satalaloka, and he went to defeat Bali Maharaj, and so Vamanadev, with his big toe, he kicked him 80,000 miles away. So in that way, he protected his devotee. And underneath the 7 lower planets, we have the 28 hellish planets, which are under the jurisdiction of Yamaraj. So that's, as we know, that's where the living entities go to suffer the consequences of their activities they've performed in life. And that's just above the Govardak Ocean. So, but all these planets, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad-Gita, Brahma Bhuvana Loka Puna Avitana Arjuna, from the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all the places of miseries wherein repeated birth and death take place. And then we have number 4, which is protection of the Lord. So protection, it can be defined according to the mentality of the living entity. For a conditioned soul, it just refers to material maintenance, and for a devotee, it's protection from Maya, which is what it's a great protection, because without the mercy of the Lord, we would be in big trouble. Number 5 is the creative impetus. The impetus for activities is fruitive work. Then number 6 is the change of the manus. And the reign of the manus are for establishing the eternal religious principles. 7 is the science of God, describing the incarnations of the Lord and his different activities together with the activities of his great devotees. 8 is the dissolution, and that's the merging of the living entities into Mahavishnu at the end of the creation. 9 is liberation, which is to purify oneself and to go back to Godhead. And 10 is the supreme shelter, which is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada, he told us that there's 4 books we must study. And the first is the Bhagavad-Gita, and then Srimad Bhagavatam, then Chaitanya Charitamrita, and then the Nectar of Devotion. So Bhagavad-Gita, it lays the foundation for our spiritual life. Bhagavad-Gita has 5 different subject matters which it's based on. 1 is Jiva, the living entities. 2 is Ishvara, the Supreme Lord. Then there's Karma, which is fruit of activities, Prakriti, material nature, and Kala, which is time. So this is the first book we need to study, and this will give us like the basics of spiritual life. And next we will move on to the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Srimad Bhagavatam, it must be studied from the first canto onwards. Like the first canto is described, it's compared to the lotus feet of the Lord. So that's creation. And the 10th canto is compared to the smile of the Lord. And then that's the Lord's eternal, ever youthful pastime. But Srila Prabhupada, he mentions that unscrupulous persons, they immediately go to the 10th canto, and especially to the 5 chapters are about Krishna and his dealing with the gopis. And then they take this as being mundane relationships, and so they commit great offense. But as devotees, we need to learn who is Krishna, all about his greatness, all about his kindness, and especially as Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So by the time we do get to the 10th canto, we're ready to, and we have the faith that Krishna's pastimes are very real, and Krishna's greatness is just part of his nature. It's not unbelievable, and it's not mythology as if someone who jumped straight to the 10th canto would believe. So the Srimad Bhagavatam, it means a beautiful story of the personality of Godhead, Krishna. And Krishna is found all throughout the pages of the Bhagavatam, and he's revealed by his pure devotees. So by carefully studying the Bhagavatam, it opens up a new world for us. Like if we read the Bhagavatam, it's very different to us studying the Bhagavatam. Like when you study the Bhagavatam, there's a lot more that is revealed, especially through Prabhupada's purports. And it's not that Prabhupada gave us these books that we just study them once and that's it. But we have to continuously be studying because this is our protection. The winds of Maya, they're always blowing around us. And it's just like, if you're in a cyclone, I used to live in Cairns, we had a lot of cyclones up there. And when a cyclone's coming, there's a warning that comes, and it says, okay, there's a cyclone, it's forming off the Coral Sea, and this is the projected path it's going to take. And it's starting off at a category 1, and it's expected to build up, say, to a category 5. So then, as soon as you know there's a cyclone coming, you have to prepare. What you do is, if you have big windows in your house, you have to get tape. You have to tape up all your windows, because if the cyclone smashes your window, at least the glass won't come in, so it's a safety measure. And then also you have to have your water, your food, you have to have your batteries, you have to stay indoors. And if things get really bad, you have to be in a room like something under the stairs, or a room where there's no windows. So it's just like, once the cyclone does come, at the beginning of a cyclone, it's not so scary. It's like you get a bit of winds, but then you come to the middle of the cyclone, which is the eye of the cyclone. And when you're in the eye of the cyclone, there's a false sense of security there. It's very calm. Even the animals, they know something's going on, like everything is dead quiet. But you know it's not going to last for long. So once you're out of the eye of the cyclone, the winds will start whipping up, and then it actually can get very, very scary because it depends on the severity of the cyclone and how much you're going to get affected. So it's just like we can be in the eye of the storm, and we can actually be truly peaceful there because that's the protection of the Lord. And in the eye of the storm, you have your protection. Your protection is the Srimad Bhagavatam. Protection is chanting our rounds. Protection is staying in the association of devotees. But once we go out of the protection zone, then Maya's there, and she's always whirling around, and she's always going to give us some trouble in some way or another. So we always have to be very, very careful. And I don't know if some of you devotees may have seen the film The Matrix. And in The Matrix they have the red pill and the blue pill. So when Morpheus gives Neo the choice to take the pill, the blue pill is, okay, you wake up from this so-called reality you're in. Or you take the red pill and you stay in illusion, and you're part of the matrix. You're part of the puzzle of the matrix. So the blue pill is you wake up. So for us, our blue pill is the Srimad Bhagavatam. This wakes us up to the material world and how the material world is working. And as this chapter is entitled, the Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. This Bhagavatam, at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, the first chapter is called Questions of the Sages. So we have Sutta Goswami, who's in Namasharanya, and he's with a lot of other sages, and they're going to perform a 1,000-year sacrifice for the benefit of Kali Yuga, because they can see into the future, and they can see the condition of people, and even for them, they could see that people will kill the cow in the future, and they could not even relate to this kind of thing. That's how a person could be so sinful that they would kill the mother cow. So then in that assembly we have Sutta Goswami, and then we have the head of the sages, which is Shanaka Rishi. So Shanaka Rishi is putting questions to Sutta Goswami, and Sutta Goswami, he was actually in the assembly of sages and when Maharaj Parikshit and Sukadev Goswami were discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. And he heard Sukadev Goswami recite 18,000 verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam. But in those ages, the sages that were very powerful, they were called Shrutidars, that just by hearing once, they could retain all that knowledge. So 18,000 verses is a lot of verses, but he retained them, and he recited to the sages at Namasharanya. So the Bhagavatam, it's very powerful, and then after Bhagavatam we have to read Chaitanya Charitamrita, and then the Nectar of Devotion. So Nectar of Devotion, as we know, it's written by Srila Rupa Goswami, and it chalks out the path of devotional service for us and how we act, and it's a handbook for devotees in Krishna consciousness. So there's a beautiful verse in the Bhagavatam. I think it's in the first canto. Krishna Dharma Swa Upagate Dharma Gyana Isaha. This Bhagavatam, it says, this Bhagavatam is as brilliant as the sun. It has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna for his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to this dense darkness of ignorance shall gain light from this Bhagavad Purana. So Krishna's very kind, and when the universe comes along, the Vedas comes along with it. And he has the instructions for the conditioned soul. Because the conditioned soul, we're all here in the material world because of our desire to want to lord it over. But also there's one great advantage of the creation, and that's how we can get out of the material world as well. Just within 100 years if we manage to live that long, then we can make it back to Godhead. Krishna's so kind, he's given us the Bhagavatam, and he made the arrangement for the Bhagavatam to be spoken. As we know, Parikshit Maharaj was a great Raja Rishi, and he was a very qualified devotee of the Lord, and he was so qualified when he was in the womb of his mother, the Lord, he protected him from the Brahmastra weapon of Ashvatthama. And so Parikshit Maharaj, he was always thinking of the Lord, and he was always in service of the Lord. But then by the will of providence, by the arrangement of the Lord, so that the Srimad Bhagavatam could be spoken, he arranged for Maharaj Parikshit to be cursed by the son of the Brahmana. His name was Shringi. But Maharaj Parikshit, he wasn't upset. There was nothing that bothered him, but he just left all his family, his beautiful wife, his children, everything, his wealth. He gave everything up, and he went to the bank of the Ganges near Hastinapur, and he went there to fast till death. And there were many sages, they all came, and they all had their opinions, but they couldn't agree. But then Sukadev Goswami came, and Sukadev Goswami, he's a 16-year-old beautiful youth, and he's actually a very, very great devotee. And when Sukadev Goswami, he had been wandering around, he came to the assembly of sages, and actually he was wandering around. He was completely off the bodily platform. He was naked, and he was walking. And as he was walking, those women and children, they were like making fun of him, and they were following him. But then when Sukadev Goswami, he walked into the assembly of the sages, because they were expert in the art of physiognomy, they could see, just by looking at Sukadev Goswami, that this is a very great soul. It's described that Sukadev Goswami, he had beautiful curly hair, he had big lotus eyes, his neck he had beautiful lines on his neck like a conch shell, and he had the hue of Lord Krishna. So all the sages are set up apart from Narad Muni and Vyasadeva, because Vyasadeva is the father of Sukadev Goswami, and so Sukadev Goswami goes, and they give him the seat of honor, the Vyasasana, and then we see Parikshit Maharaj. He's begging Sukadev Goswami, please, you tell me, what is the duty of a person who is about to die? What should he think? How should he act? What should he hear? And so then Sukadev Goswami, because he was taught by his father Vyasadeva, he was able to answer all his questions. And when Maharaj Parikshit is asking questions about the creation, he doesn't ask about if there's a creator or not. He knows there's a creator because he's a devotee. But then he starts asking questions of how the creation works, where the material elements come from, and so on and so forth. So we're very lucky we have this Srimad Bhagavatam, because it is the answer to all questions. And it's actually a very wonderful thing to be very grateful about, because we're so fortunate. Like there's so many ways of thinking out there which are very different and very speculative, whereas the Bhagavatam and all Vedic literatures, they're not speculative. It's called the ripened fruit of the Vedic tree of knowledge. So this Bhagavatam is passed down through the sages. It's not passed down through the conditioned souls who are full of defects, but it's these souls who are very empowered, and with the sweet mango of the Vedic knowledge, they're passing it down from one to the next, so it doesn't become spoiled. Srila Prabhupada, he was invited to a meeting at Kurukshetra, I think it was 1974, and he had just been sick, so he was asking his disciples, what do you think? Do you think we should go to Kurukshetra or not? And I'm like, no, Prabhupada, don't go because you're really sick and it's a big drive. But then later on in the afternoon, Prabhupada, he called the disciples and he said, okay, now I've decided I have to go, I've been invited. So Srila Prabhupada, he went with some of his disciples to Kurukshetra. And the organizers, they actually wanted Prabhupada to come because they knew Prabhupada was world famous, so this would give them some credence to their Pandal program. But they actually didn't want Prabhupada to speak because Prabhupada was like a no-nonsense approach. So then Prabhupada's sitting there, and then there's all these yogis and people, they're all like, pontificating and like, oh, this is about, Bhagavad-Gita is about Dharma, about being kind, about all this kind of stuff. But they didn't mention Lord Krishna. So Prabhupada, he's getting angrier and angrier. And then he just like can't take it anymore. And he stands up and then he starts talking in Hindi, but it's like Sarvadharma Parityajya and other verses, like really like glorifying Krishna. And at the end, everyone like goes running off, because it's like they were quite startled. But Prabhupada, he's like laughing and he's going to his disciples, did you hear what I was saying? And because they couldn't understand Hindi, but they could understand the verses that Prabhupada was saying, they were like, yes, Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, yes, I couldn't stand to see them not glorifying Krishna, And that's what happens when you're in the realms of mental speculation. You don't have a proper spiritual master, you're not in the association of devotees, then you just speculate. And here it is, this is like the land of Krishna, this is the Bhagavad-Gita. Bhagavad-Gita is on a battlefield, it's not about peace and everything's all wonderful, And so yeah, Prabhupada sorted everyone out. So, I'll just do the verse again. Srila Sukadeva Goswami said, in the Srimad Bhagavatam there are 10 divisions of statements regarding the following: the creation of the universe, sub-creation, planetary systems, protection of the Lord, the creative impetus, the change of manus, the science of God, returning home back to Godhead, liberation, and the summum bonum. To isolate the transcendence of the summum bonum, the symptoms of the rest are described sometimes by Vedic inference, sometimes by direct explanation, and sometimes by summary explanations given by the great sages. The elementary creation of 16 items of matter, namely the 5 elements, fire, water, land, air, and sky, sound, form, taste, smell, touch, and the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, and mind, is known as sarga, where subsequent resultant interactions of modes of material nature is called visarga. Any comments or questions? Oh, okay, thank you. All blessed to Srila Prabhupada.